There's something strange about how time reshapes the way we see the past. In the beginning, when someone leaves, it feels final, like their mind is made up, like you've already become a closed chapter. But memory has a way of distorting what we thought we knew. It doesn't preserve facts, it preserves feelings. And eventually, even the person who walked away begins to look back through a different lens. Not because they planned to, but because silence has a way of making the truth louder than it ever was in the noise. So if you're wondering whether your absence even matters, if you're questioning whether they're truly gone, or if they'll ever feel the weight of what they walked away from, this message is for you. Today, we're going to explore the hidden emotional forces that unfold after a breakup. Not through wishful thinking, but through real, observable patterns, psychological truths that explain why, over time, your ex begins to feel worse, why they start to question what they let go, and why it often hits long after you've already stopped waiting for it. If you're ready, like this video, subscribe to Stoic Station. Now, let's dive in. 1. The Endowment Effect. Why memories become more powerful than reality. There are moments in life when an ordinary object, one that's been sitting unnoticed for years, suddenly hits you in a way that feels almost spiritual. It doesn't have to be anything valuable. A worn-out sweater, a cracked photograph, even a book you haven't touched in over a decade. But in that instant, it becomes something else entirely. It's no longer just an object. It's a portal, a mirror, a time machine. That's what happened to me not long ago. I was in the attic, sorting through old boxes, things I kept putting off for years. One of those boxes was labeled in my handwriting from what must have been over a decade ago, just memories. When I opened it, the first thing I saw was a small, beat-up action figure. One arm broken off, paint chipped, and yet it stopped me in my tracks. That toy had belonged to my son. It was part of a set he used to carry everywhere, from car rides to dinners, to grocery store aisles where he'd battle invisible villains while I pushed the cart. That toy cost maybe $5 when it was new. But in that moment, it was priceless. It held within it entire weekends, belly laughs, bedtime stories, and a version of myself I hadn't thought about in years. A version of me that was present, patient, and completely in awe of the life I was living. That's what the endowment effect is all about. As human beings, we overvalue the things we've emotionally invested in. It's not logical, it's deeply personal. We attach weight, meaning, and emotion to what we've shared time and connection with, and often it's only after we've lost or distanced ourselves from it that we truly begin to understand its worth. This is exactly what happens to your ex over time. In the early stages of a breakup, people usually feel a sense of relief. It's a release from the pressure, the tension, the internal conflict that likely built up in the final weeks or months. They don't walk away burdened by nostalgia or depth, they walk away seeking freedom. But that freedom is often short-lived, because as the days stretch into weeks and weeks into months, the sharpness of what went wrong begins to dull. The memory starts to edit itself. The mind, almost as if protecting itself from guilt or sorrow, rewrites the narrative. We rarely remember relationships as they actually were. We remember them as they felt at their best. At first, she may only recall the arguments, the distance, the final conversation. But over time, those recollections fade like writing on a fogged-up mirror. In their place, a different picture starts to emerge. The one where she's laughing with you on a random Tuesday. The one where your hands fit hers like they were designed for it. The one where you surprised her with dinner after a long day. The inside jokes. The quiet moments. The safety of knowing someone had her back even when the world didn't. And that's the trick of emotional memory. It doesn't value logic. It values presence, connection, the feeling of being known. In hindsight, You become less about the reality she walked away from, and more about the version of you she's now afraid she'll never find again. That's why your absence matters. That's why silence works, not as manipulation but as space. Space for the emotional fog to clear. Space for her to feel the cost of losing something that can't be easily replaced. When you're no longer texting her, calling her, showing up on her radar, her mind starts to do something it hasn't had to do before. Fill in the blanks. She begins to wonder what you're thinking, who you're becoming, if you've moved on, and more importantly, she begins to reflect, not on your flaws, but on your presence in her life, your reliability, the energy you brought into every room, the way you anchored her, even when she couldn't name it back then. And this is where the regret begins. Not because she suddenly wakes up one morning and realizes she made a mistake, but because time has given her a clearer lens, a way to see you not through the emotional chaos of the breakup, but through the emotional gravity of the bond you once shared. She sees the man she didn't fully appreciate, the version of you she took for granted, the small things that didn't seem special until they were gone. You shift in her mind from the man she walked away from to the man she never thought she'd lose. And here's the part that's often misunderstood. Your value didn't suddenly increase. You were already valuable, already grounded, giving, steady. But sometimes people don't know what they're holding until they put it down and feel the ache of empty hands. We think memory is linear, factual. It's not. It's emotional. And once she begins to associate you with warmth, comfort, and moments that now seem irreplaceable, her mind starts doing what every human mind does when faced with the cost of loss. It amplifies the good. It clings to it. It rewrites the story to make sense of the void. There's a powerful irony in all of this. When you were readily available, when your texts came quickly, your love was offered freely. She didn't feel the weight of your presence, because it was constant, because it was dependable. But when you stepped back, when you honored yourself by not chasing what walked away, you became scarce, and scarcity creates value, not artificial value, emotional value. That's why she feels worse over time. She doesn't just miss you, she begins to long for the version of herself that existed in your presence, the woman who felt safer, more seen, more adored. And whether or not she ever reaches out, whether or not she ever says it out loud, the emotional impact remains. The regret simmers quietly beneath the surface, waiting for a moment, sometimes any excuse at all, to bubble up. It could be a song, a scent, a memory sparked by something completely unrelated. But when it hits hard. And suddenly, she's not thinking about why the relationship ended. She's thinking about what she lost. Not just you as a man, but the emotional foundation you provided, the love she didn't realize she was relying on until it was no longer there. You might never hear about this. You might never get a call or an apology. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. That's the invisible work of the endowment effect. It's what time does when no one's looking. And if you're the man who chose stillness over neediness, who chose peace over proving your worth, then trust me, she feels it. Every single day, a little more. So, when you feel like you're being forgotten, understand that you're actually being remembered. Not as a fallback, not as a regret she pities, but as a man whose absence taught her what presence really meant. That's the power of being irreplaceable. Not because you tried to convince anyone, but because you lived, loved, and left with dignity. And dignity is something no one can fake. She knows that now. So stay steady, keep walking, keep building. You're not just a memory. You're the standard she'll measure the next man against. And no one forgets the one they never fully deserved. Absolutely. Below is the rewritten and expanded version of 2. Loss aversion. She doesn't feel it until she can't reach you. There's a strange truth about the way we're wired as human beings, one that shows up everywhere, from boardrooms to breakups. We feel the pain of losing something far more intensely than we feel the joy of gaining it. This isn't just theory, it's been studied, tested, lived. You can fantasize all day about landing a higher-paying job, but it won't shake you the same way getting laid off tomorrow would. Loss burns deeper. It lingers. It has a weight that gain simply can't replicate. And in relationships, that principle cuts even deeper. You see, most women don't end a relationship thinking they're closing the door forever. In fact, many of them walk away with the quiet assumption that the door will remain cracked open, that if they wanted to, they could walk back through it. Not because they're manipulative, not because they're cruel, but because in their minds you were always there, steady, reliable, present, and they assume you'll stay that way even when they're no longer showing up for you. They might tell themselves they just need space, or that you'll still be friends, or that you won't really disappear, because you never have. And so they move on with a strange kind of confidence, not in their decision but in your loyalty. They believe that even if they leave, you'll still answer when they call, that your heart will still be available, that your love is on standby. But what they never expect, what genuinely stuns them, is your silence. When you go no contact, it's not about punishment, it's not about power games, it's not even about making them miss you. It's about creating space for reality to set in, space where they no longer have access to the things they once took for granted. Your words, your warmth, your willingness to try again. Because when someone thinks they can come and go as they please, they never truly feel the cost of leaving. Not until access is revoked, not until the love they assumed would always be available is no longer within reach. That's when the shift begins. At first, they might brush it off. They may tell themselves you're just hurt, just reacting. They expect a text in a few days, maybe a comment on their post, a check-in, something. But when nothing comes, when your energy completely vanishes from their world, it forces them to confront something they've avoided, the finality of loss. They thought you were the safe option, the fallback, the one who would never truly let go. But now the script has changed. The man who once made them feel so sure is suddenly a mystery. And that's unsettling, because now they don't just miss your presence, they fear the permanence of your absence. They start to feel the imbalance. You're healing, growing, rediscovering your rhythm. But them? They're spiraling, not because you did anything to hurt them, but because you finally stopped doing the things that made them feel in control. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped reaching out. You stopped reminding them that they still had a hold on you. And in doing that, you did something more powerful than any romantic gesture. You let them feel the real consequences of their choices. They think they're going to walk away from you and still have access to your love. But when you go no contact, they finally experience the actual loss. That's the emotional tipping point, because what they thought was optional, your attention, your loyalty, your energy, becomes unavailable. Not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but because a man who respects himself doesn't offer his presence to someone who's rejected it. And when presence becomes absence, it changes everything. It's in that silence that she starts to question what she's really lost. And not just the surface-level things, not just the messages, the jokes, the shared routines. She starts to question whether she misjudged the depth of what you gave, whether she underestimated how good she had it, whether in trying to find something better, she let go of something real. That's what loss aversion does. It doesn't creep in when someone's standing in front of you offering love. It hits when you realize that love isn't waiting anymore, that it won't always be available, that the person who once gave you everything is no longer extending the invitation. She might not say it out loud, she may not reach out or admit the regret, but inside she feels it, that ache, that sting, that realization that she thought she could leave without consequence, but now she's left wondering if she gave up something she'll never find again. And the irony is, your silence says everything her words never could. It speaks to your strength, your clarity, your refusal to shrink just to keep someone close. It's not cold, it's not cruel. It's what happens when a man understands that his love has value, and he won't give it to someone who treats it like it's disposable. Let her feel it, not to punish her, but to honor yourself. Let her feel the weight of losing access to the version of you who would have done anything to make it work. Because that version no longer exists, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about yourself more. That's when everything shifts. That's when the regret begins, the questions, the wondering. And that's when you finally see what no contact was always about. Not about getting her back, but about getting yourself back, fully, quietly, powerfully, and in that space where she can no longer reach you. She'll finally feel what you felt when she walked away, and maybe, just maybe, that's when she'll realize she didn't just lose you. She lost the best version of love she ever had. Absolutely. Below is the rewritten, emotionally resonant version of 3. Cognitive dissonance, the quiet conflict inside her mind. People don't fall out of love all at once. That's a comforting myth we tell ourselves to make breakups sound cleaner than they really are. But the truth is far more complicated and much quieter. Love fades like light at the end of the day, gradually, almost imperceptibly. Not because it wasn't real, but because emotional conflict creeps in slowly and silently, wearing away at what once felt certain. She didn't wake up one morning and decide to stop loving you. It didn't happen in a flash. What actually occurred was the slow build-up of discomfort, small moments where she felt unseen, unheard, or unsure. Some of those feelings may have come from you, some came from her own doubts and fears, but instead of addressing them openly, she started retreating in tiny ways, less engaged, less affectionate, less emotionally present. And eventually, when that discomfort grew louder than the connection, she told herself she had to go. Maybe she announced the breakup with conviction. Maybe she told friends and family that she was done. She might have even looked confident about it. But what no one sees, and what she won't admit out loud, is that a part of her didn't leave when she walked away. That part stayed behind, still tethered to the memories, the energy, the unresolved pieces of the story between you. That's where the real conflict begins. Because while her mouth said it was over, her heart never quite caught up. And when those two pieces of her don't align, when her decision no longer matches her emotional truth, she enters the disorienting state known as cognitive dissonance. This isn't just a concept in psychology. It's something you can feel in your gut, even if you don't know what to call it. It's that mental tug-of-war between who she claims to be and what she still feels. The late-night thoughts she can't shake, the way her chest tightens when your name shows up unexpectedly, the way she scrolls through old photos, not to reminisce, but to search for certainty she can't find. She told herself you weren't right for her. She justified it. She built a story around it. But at the same time, she still dreams about you, still wonders if she gave up something solid for reasons she didn't fully understand. Still replays the moments where your eyes met and time felt slower, steadier, safer. And because she doesn't want to appear uncertain, because she already declared her decision, she's now trapped in her own narrative. That's the quiet war she's fighting inside. On one hand, she said she's done. On the other hand, she still dreams about you. At first, this conflict is manageable. She stays distracted. She leans on friends who cheer her on. She fills her schedule. She tells herself she's healing. But cognitive dissonance doesn't dissolve with distraction. It waits, it lingers, it builds. And the longer you stay still, the louder it becomes. Because your silence holds up a mirror. Not a cruel one, not a spiteful one, but an honest one. And in that mirror, she doesn't see a man begging for another chance. She sees a man who honored her choice and kept walking. A man who didn't try to convince her to stay. A man who knew his value and respected himself enough to let her go without protest. That's what makes the dissonance so unbearable. She expected you to break. She expected you to plead. She thought that if she left, you'd chase, and that would have confirmed her decision, made it easier to move on. But when you didn't, when you met her silence with stillness, it forced her to sit with the raw, unfiltered reality. Maybe you weren't the problem. Maybe leaving didn't feel like freedom. Maybe the story she told herself no longer makes sense. And now, she has two choices. To relieve the pressure of that internal conflict, she can lie to herself. She can double down. She can convince herself that she never truly loved you, that it wasn't real, that she was only settling. It's a way to protect her ego, to make the pain easier to carry. Or she can admit the truth, that she might have made a mistake, that you were more than she gave you credit for, that love was still alive when she walked away, and that scares her more than she'll ever say out loud. And here's the part that matters most. What she chooses doesn't change the fact that the war exists. Whether she denies it or embraces it, the cognitive dissonance remains. And over time, it chips away at the false certainty she projected after the breakup. She may not text you, she may never say the words, but you'll feel it in the energy if she ever returns. The hesitation, the vulnerability, the softened ego. Because somewhere along the way, the story shifted from "I had to leave" to "What if I left the wrong person?" And that's the power of quiet strength. That's what happens when you don't react, when you don't chase, when you trust that her decision isn't your responsibility to fix. Let the silence speak. Let her fight the war within herself. Because when a man remains calm in the storm, it's not just attractive, it's unforgettable. And no matter what story she tries to tell herself, she'll never be able to silence the one truth that echoes in the quiet. She left someone who never truly left her heart. 4. Rumination and psychological entanglement. Regret doesn't rush, it builds. She won't show it, not at first. She'll smile in pictures. She'll keep herself busy with dinners, trips, projects, and the kind of social distractions that let her look okay from the outside. And for a while, she might even believe she is. She'll convince herself that she's moving on, that this new space she's carved out is healing. But distraction isn't healing. It's delay. It's a temporary silence where the noise of regret hasn't had time to catch up yet, because regret never rushes. It doesn't knock on the door the week after she leaves. It waits, quietly, patiently. It watches her fill her schedule, keep her posture straight, and repeat to her friends that she's doing fine. But underneath it all, something begins to stir. Not out of longing, but out of memory. Not out of romance, but out of realization. At some point, her mind starts circling back, not because she chooses to, but because memory doesn't operate on logic, it operates on emotion. And when the world slows down, when the high of freedom fades and the novelty of new experiences wears off, her thoughts will return to you, not all at once, not with a crash, but gently, persistently, uninvited. She'll start asking herself questions she doesn't want the answers to. Why did I leave? Did I take him for granted? Would things have been different if I'd just shown up better? Did I lose something that was never really broken? And the most haunting part of all, the part she won't say out loud to anyone, is this: you didn't chase her. You didn't beg. You didn't unravel. You didn't throw yourself into her shadow hoping for scraps of attention. You held your ground. You honored her decision. And you walked away with a quiet strength she wasn't expecting. That stillness, it speaks louder than any words you could have offered. Because now, there's no distraction from the truth, no noise to drown it out. You became a mirror she can't escape, and in your absence you didn't shrink. You became clearer, more defined, more complete. She begins to see you not as the man she left, but as the man she underestimated. And that's where psychological entanglement begins to take hold. She can't stop thinking about you, not because she misses being with someone, but because she misses being with you. It's not about the comfort, it's not about habit. It's about who she was when you were in her life, about the version of herself that existed in your presence, a version that now feels a little more distant, a little harder to return to. The memories hit in strange moments, not always dramatic, sometimes just in the way a song plays in the background of a cafe, or the way someone else's cologne resembles yours, or the way a quiet Sunday reminds her of how you used to sit beside her without needing to fill the silence. And in those moments, she doesn't just remember, you become real again. Regret grows slowly because it builds its power in the spaces between distractions. And when enough time has passed, when your name hasn't come up in weeks and yet still lingers in her chest, she starts to realize something she never gave herself permission to before. You were good to her. You were steady. And you meant more than she allowed herself to admit. She starts to really wonder why she didn't appreciate the relationship. That's the moment when everything changes. That's when what used to be a memory becomes a reckoning. Because now, every man she meets is measured against a standard she never expected to carry with her, yours. And every connection that doesn't match your depth, your presence, your calm, reminds her of what she walked away from. You don't have to do anything for this to happen. In fact, it only happens when you do nothing, when you stay grounded, centered, quietly rebuilding yourself. Your absence becomes your most powerful presence, and the longer you stay away, the more you become something she has to face, not as a past partner, but as a reflection of her own choices. This is why rumination hurts more than the breakup itself, because it reveals what distraction was trying to hide, that she still feels something, that she's still attached in ways she never resolved, that you weren't just a chapter, you were something deeper, more defining, and now she's the one carrying the weight of that realization. Let her carry it, not out of cruelty, but out of truth, because regret, when it finally catches up, doesn't knock. It kicks the door in, and by the time it does, you'll already be gone. Not bitter, not broken, but better. And that's what hurts her the most. Not that you left, but that you never needed to come back. Summary. And maybe the most important truth you'll ever carry forward is this: love is a choice, not a transaction. The most freeing truth a man can ever embrace is that you were never meant to convince someone to love you. That was never the point. Love, in its truest form, cannot be bargained for. It isn't something you earn by bending, chasing, sacrificing your peace, or proving your worth. Real love is a choice, not a response to pressure, not a debt paid in emotional currency, not something owed because you gave more. It's freely chosen, willingly, with courage, with clarity. And if it isn't chosen, it isn't love. It's performance, obligation, a fragile illusion that always needs reassurance to survive. You cannot compel someone to love you. What makes love beautiful, what makes it matter, is that it comes from freedom. And when you let go of someone who doesn't choose you, you're not walking away from love. You're walking toward it. You're making space for something mutual, something sacred. Let her go, not because your feelings disappeared, but because any love that has to be forced is already gone. And if she ever truly understood your worth, if she ever saw you clearly, she'll come back, not out of guilt, not out of loneliness, but because she saw you standing still and chose you again. This time, for real. If something in this message stirred something real in you, let that feeling guide your next step. Share your thoughts below. I read every single one. Like this video, subscribe to Stoic Station, and when you're ready for more clarity, more strength, I'll be right here, waiting. Until then, walk steady. You're not alone.